Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I am Jeremy.
I am Andy, and you are two for the last two. You know your name.
I'm on a roll.
That is really good.
We are going back to 1999 for unbelievably the last time.
That doesn't even seem real.
We have been doing this gimmick throughout this year of returning to 1999 because it's known as a great movie year. The movies are turning 25 years old this year. And so we've just enjoyed going back and looking at a lot of movies that we loved at the time or thought like needed to be revisited. I've seen a couple I hadn't seen before that you recommended. I was really into that. And this week, as we culminated, we had a conversation where every other time I picked one, you've picked one. But this time we were both kind of on the same page. We were like, there's one we probably ought to pick. Yeah. But we didn't really love wasting our last pick on that one because it's just like, we need a little more of an upper. Mm-hmm. And so we both realized we're talking about the same thing. Let's just balance it out together. So we decided the one we have to talk about is American Beauty.
Yeah. Best Picture winner of 1999.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the one that's going to balance it out, the lighter, the more popular pick, I guess.
Literally anything is lighter.
Yes. 10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah. And I think we should start with 10 Things I Hate About You because I have a feeling if people listen to this episode, they're going to hear about 10 Things I Hate About You. So let's give the people what they want. Let's jump in to 10 Things I Hate About You.
We're here for the people.
We're absolutely here for the people. I want to just share some of the stats. By the way, I've never been more prepared for a podcast in my life as far as notes and having things ready for it. I just be prepared. Because
now I all of a sudden feel inadequate.
Oh, don't feel inadequate.
More so than usual.
You're here like to have the great reactions, Andy. You've always got the great off the cuff things. I need more, planned.
You are organized. You are,
All right. So Rotten Tomatoes score, critics 71%. Mm-hmm. That actually kind of surprises me.
A little bit, me too.
Just because critics usually are a little more uptight about this sort of ridiculous teen comedy, but it is really well done. Audience score of 69%. Also surprises me because it's just not the type of movie where I would go, well, the critics are going to like it more than the general audience. Yeah. I would have bet anything it'd be the other way around. Had a $30 million budget, grossed $53.6 million worldwide. It was sort of a moderate hit. It was definitely one of those movies that found its audience on video rental or DVD sales.
$100 million, yeah.
This is a movie that I did not see when it first came out.
Me neither.
I did not expect this was going to be a movie I liked. Yeah. It's one of those movies that I didn't watch until it wasn't even that I had friends recommend it to me. I just had friends like start talking about it, quoting things, and I'm like, "What are y'all talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, that's from 10 Things I Hate About You. You don't know it?" And I'm like, "No, why would I know it?" And they're like, "Well, because it's good." And so then I was like, "All right, I got to track this movie down and watch it." And I watched it, and I was like, "Oh, like these teen rom-coms can actually be good." I think this is the first one that kind of enlightened me to the idea that they can actually be fun, enjoyable movies. Yeah. What's your, you sounded like you agreed that you were the same way, came to it late. But
I did come to it late. And funny enough, this is a movie I really don't remember the first time I watched it. Yeah, I just kind of remember this movie always being around and being on. And I mean, now it lives on still. I'll see, TikToks or YouTube clips or Instagram reels, mostly of Julia Stiles reciting that poem. But it's a movie that still has some cultural relevance. Like my daughter Molly knows this movie and talks about this movie and has seen this movie. It's still going strong in a lot of ways.
Yeah, obviously there are things in it that are very 1999 that have it feeling a little dated, but the overall story is timeless, and in part because they adapted it from Shakespeare, which brings me into some of the more credits. It was written by Karen McCullough and Kirsten Smith for the screen. They're a team that did Legally Blonde, The House Bunny, and The Ugly Truth. So, 10 Things I Hate About You, probably their most successful in my mind of that. I love that also on IMDb, William Shakespeare gets a writing credit.
Thank goodness. Someone's finally giving that guy some credit.
I did not realize that Shakespeare is on IMDb. If you look at it, he has got a long list of credits. And of course, it's just like iteration after iteration of adaptations of his works.
Good for him.
And his picture is that like sketch picture that we all know of William Shakespeare.
It's so funny if it's like him in sunglasses. You see the actors on IMDb.
But I absolutely love that William Shakespeare was a clickable,
just killing it on IMDb.
I wonder if I like to imagine maybe old Bill made it to heaven, and he's looking down, and he goes, "Yeah, add that one to my IMDb credit.
Chalk that one up.
Another one for Billy."
Yep.
That's so funny. I wrote a little summary of the movie because I don't always do a good job of being ready to give a summary. So if you will grant me this, hopefully I read it well.
Go for it.
An adaptation of Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew, this movie is a rom-com set in a high school following the intricate relationships of who does and doesn't want to date whom. Our crew of main protagonists include sisters Kat and Bianca Stratford. Bianca is the sophomore who cherishes her popularity, while Kat is the bitter senior who doesn't seem to like anyone very much. Cameron is a new student at the school who quickly crushes on Bianca, but when he discovers he can't take her out because their dad has a rule that Bianca can't date until Kat does, he embarks on a scheme to get her partnered. First, his right-hand man, Michael, enlists the aid of Joey, the high school's resident shallow heartthrob, to believe it's Joey's own scheme for him to hire Patrick Verona, the school's resident unknowable bad boy, to be the man brave enough to court Kat. Through Patrick's attempts, he grows to discover that he actually likes Kat, while simultaneously, we the audience discover that we actually love him. Cameron discovers that despite his master plan for Bianca, in a twist anybody who has ever high schooled before could see coming, Bianca actually had eyes for the hunky Joey, and not the please love me desperation of puppy dog Cameron. Until Bianca discovers that Joey's all about himself, which leads to the realization that she needs a guy who is all about herself. Cameron. When things fall apart for Joey, he flippantly reveals the plot between Patrick and Kat, leading to our third act drama as the budding romance faces its final hurdle. Will she forgive him for the betrayal? Well, he buys her a guitar, and she does. Does all of that sound awesome? Well, it should, because it is.
Nice. Job well done.
Yeah, it's a complicated plot, actually.
It really,
not hard to follow. But
it's not hard to follow, but when you read it, it's like, there's a lot going on in this movie.
There is a lot, and there's even other side characters I didn't really get into and side plots, but you can see the sort of the bones. So I've never read Taming of the Shrew from Shakespeare, but like when I think about kind of the plot, I'm like, this does sort of have a Shakespearean feel to it.
Yeah.
The complicated relationships and the motivations, like he loves all those tangled webs. Yes. And that's exactly what this is. This is a tangled web thing. But really what this movie is, or what makes it work so well, I think, is that this cast kills it.
It's insane. Yeah, it's crazy.
So going through some of the cast, Julia Stiles plays Kat Stratford. If we had done a I'm buying stock in them podcast back in 1999, I would have been like, I'm buying so much stock in her. And honestly, if we were doing a podcast a few years later, we'd be doing I thought she was going to be way bigger intrigue, because it really didn't go very long for her. This was a quick burn for her in the limelight. She did this. She did Save the Last Dance.
This was a big hit.
It was, and those were about it for big starring roles.
Yeah, and then she's got smaller parts in the Bourne movies.
Yeah, but by the time she pops up in those, everyone's gonna like, hey, that's
Julia Stiles.
That's Julia Stiles.
I know.
Like, it's kind of weird. It's a small part for her, but
I don't know this at all. She kind of strikes me as someone who maybe just didn't want the big. I don't know. I should have researched that a little bit. I don't know that she wanted just that A-list Hollywood career and all that spotlight.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, it feels like there's got to be some reason why it didn't happen, because I don't think it's a lack of talent. I think she's great in this movie. I think she's awesome.
Unbelievable in this movie.
I don't know how old she was in this movie, but
she kills it.
Yes, like I watched this and I go, my first note I think I wrote was, the two leads in this are absolutely killing it. Oh, yeah. Which brings us to our other lead, young Heath Ledger, playing Patrick Verona. He was a no-name, of course, at the time. Yeah. He kind of rose slowly after this. Yep. I mean, he was in The Patriot, looking totally different because he's blonde in The Patriot. Yeah. He did A Knight's Tale. That's sort of his first like leading role. Mm-hmm. It was like a fun movie. Had some supporting roles in movies like Lords of Dogtown, in which he was really good. Mm-hmm. But really, like, honestly, whatever you want to say about the movie, his big, like, I'm a star movie was Brokeback Mountain. Yeah. And then The Dark Knight is when he becomes a legend. Yeah. And then, unfortunately, he dies. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It's crazy. It's insane to think that this is the same person that portrayed this character and the Joker. Yeah. Like, that's why. I mean, and I know that. And it's like, we've talked a lot about the Joker performance on here. But even watching this movie again, I was like, I can't believe
whatever it is, years later, 7, 8 years later, he's the Joker.
Yeah, you're right.
It's crazy.
When you say it like that, it's hard to believe it wasn't that long.
It really wasn't that long.
Yeah. He is so charming in this movie.
He is so charming.
I think when I first saw the poster of this movie and he's kind of like front and center and he's just got like this big dark hair, I was just like, who is this guy?
He's a doofus, no, he's great.
You start watching it at first, of course, like I said, he's playing the schools. He's the bad boy of the school. Everyone's kind of scared of him. There's rumors about like, all the crazy stuff he's done. But then as the movie goes on, he starts, his character gets to start being shown more. I'm like, man, Heath Ledger's got it. And his character's a great character written for him.
It's a well-written character.
He's playing the confident guy who, in the movie, he's the guy who gets it the most of anyone. Yeah. Like, he's the guy who doesn't do as many dumb things that you're like, you're so, what are you doing?
Why would you do that?
He's got these great little bits of advice he throws at people that like, surprise you.
You're right. It's a really well written part.
But he gets to shine. I think my favorite part of the movie for him, and the moment where I just kind of laughed and go like, yeah, dude is such a star, is they're doing the background research on Kat, trying to end, and they're kind of unloading it to him. And Cameron, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, says, another bad thing. Bianca says that Kat likes pretty guys. And the way he just like looks at him and he kind of slowly stands up, like confused and like offended, and goes, "Oh, you saying I'm not a pretty guy?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh no, you're great." Perfect.
Yeah,
I mean, like I was like, Heath Ledger, that you're a star.
Oh yeah,
like,
every note that he needs to hit in this movie, he does.
Yeah. And I'll just say this: like, it's the type of role I could see going wrong so easily.
Oh yeah, that's how I feel about this whole movie.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it could have gone so bad, or just been just another in a long line of generic and or raunchy teen comedies.
Yeah. And it certainly has.
It has
bits and moments of those tropes where you're like, this is such a 90s teen comedy thing.
Sure.
But yeah, it's the other moments that elevate it and rise above
it. The other moments tip the scales big time.
Yeah. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as we mentioned before, plays Cameron, who is sort of the inciting character through all of it because he's the new kid at school. Yeah. He's been a star since he was a kid. Yeah. He was in Angels of the Outfield.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the show Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah.
And of course, later, he's one of those guys that has a ridiculously prolific IMDb when you look at it.
Yeah.
But he started getting more like starring roles in movies, in the movie Brick.
Yeah.
Which was, what's the guy's name that made that movie? And he gone on to make like Knives Out and
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson. Yeah. I almost said Brian, but it's because it's Brian without the B.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
RIAN. Exactly. Ryan Johnson. He was in 500 Days of Summer, and then of course he pairs up with our guy Nolan to do Inception to be in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. I think he's directed a couple things.
He has. Yeah. I think he wrote, directed, and starred in Don John, which was actually like a surprisingly good little film.
Yep.
But here's the thing: as much as I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt, when I watch this movie now, I'm like, his character sucks.
Yeah, and he kind of, really not through any fault of his, he kind of just gets blown off the screen by everybody else too.
He does, but you're right. It's definitely through no fault of his own. And in fact, like, it's the fact that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is so like innately likable that you kind of like root for this guy, despite the fact that what he is the dude who crushes on just a pretty girl at first sight and obsesses, and he's like a bad friend.
It's obnoxious.
You're just like, if this guy was real, everybody would be like, dude,
this guy.
I hate this guy. But because it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this movie, I'm actually rooting for him.
I know.
So, good bit of casting there too. Because if you don't get a guy with the likability of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you don't go along with it.
No, exactly.
Larissa Olenek plays Bianca.
Yeah.
She was in The Secret World of Alex Mack for 5 years, was kind of like her big role. That's a show I didn't watch, but I remember the name now that I hear that.
Yeah.
And she's still acting to this day, but she's mostly just done TV shows. And I feel bad for this note, but my note for her was she's the most replaceable of the main cast in this movie.
She is. Well, I mean, it's like when you compare, put her up against the other three, I mean, they just had much bigger careers and... Yeah. I don't think she's bad by any means.
She's not actually bad.
Yeah, you're right. You could swap out a lot of people.
Yeah, there's just a lot of actors from around that time, around that age, that you could just swap it in, and the movie doesn't change.
It doesn't change. No.
David Krumholtz plays Michael Ekman. There's so many of these last names after this point where you're like, I don't think that last name was ever said in the movie.
Right.
So when I see it in IMDb, I'm like, okay, sure.
Sure, sounds good.
Krumholtz is a guy who, like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, has been acting since he was a kid. Yeah. And if you look at his IMDb, because he mostly plays like small parts and things, I mean, he has got a ridiculously long IMDb. He's always been likable to me. I think the first thing I saw him in was Addams Family Values, which was a fun one, but all the way through to being in Oppenheimer last year in a great little supporting role.
Yeah, it was.
That said, man, he is hamming it up in this movie.
He is. He really is
doing the most.
He is doing a lot. Yeah.
It's the type of role that I imagine someone with his acting talent, he probably looks back at and goes like, man,
he's like,
I can't watch myself.
Why didn't somebody stop me or be like, hey, man, like just bring that down a notch?
Yeah. So nothing that like ruins the movie, but
no,
like,
not at all. But
it's definitely like, you know, we talk about some of the 99 movie tropes, like the scene of him on his like small little bike and going over the hill and riding down a crash. Like that's just, I was kind of like, okay,
it's a lot.
This is a very
But I think back
trope.
in those days too, like sometimes when you would get those parts in those teen movies, it would be like, here's my chance.
Yeah.
Like I gotta do the stuff so that someone will notice me, maybe type of situation.
Probably.
That was like a Seth Green or something in Can't Hardly Wait. Same thing where it's just like, man, I'm gonna throw 110 miles an hour this whole movie.
That's true. And you know, sometimes
it works. Sometimes
it doesn't. Seth Green, it was like, thank you, Seth Green, for doing that.
Yeah, and this here it's just like,
it's
okay, man.
Yeah. Calm down. Andrew Keegan plays Joey in the movie. Mm-hmm. He was in the movie Camp Nowhere, which was a movie that I watched as a kid.
Yeah, I always remember that.
Very familiar with. So when I saw him, I was like, hey, it's the guy from Camp Nowhere.
Yeah.
And he was in about 5 seconds of Independence Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the young man that's in a truck with a girl and he's trying to
take advantage of their last night on Earth.
Yes. Yeah. What I will always remember about this, though, is being at a friend's house and his sister and one of her friends were watching Independence Day. They watched the entire movie and they were literally saying this for that 5 seconds to see him on screen because they thought he was so hot.
Oh, nice.
And I'm just like, that is the lamest thing I've ever heard. He's on screen for 5 seconds.
I mean, literally like 5 seconds. Yeah. And then the brother like pulls him out of the truck or pulls her out of the truck or whatever.
Yeah. So that's when I realized girls were way more ridiculous than guys when it comes to that stuff. It's like, guys can be crazy about girls. They'll never watch like a whole movie for 5 seconds of a girl
snippet,
being in
right?
that. Yeah. Gabrielle Union is in this movie as just sort of oh, hey, look, it's Gabrielle Union.
I know, right? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Some of my favorite characters in this movie are the small supporting characters, some of the adult characters. Larry Miller plays the dad.
Yeah.
Great dad character.
He's great. Yeah, he's great. And he's another guy that's like, he's been around forever and he's got a ton of credits under his belt.
He had one of my favorite line deliveries in the movie where they're talking about Bogey Lowenstein's party.
Yeah.
And he goes, what's a Bogey Lowenstein? I cracked up. I was like, I'm going to use that. I don't know how, I don't know what context, but when teenagers are talking about things I don't understand,
just say that.
What's a Bogey Lowenstein?
And then watch teenagers just give you the most strange look in the world,
which they do anyway. So I might as well
lean into it.
Yeah. Daryl Mitchell plays Mr. Morgan, the teacher that I absolutely love.
Yes.
Because he just just lets the students have it. I love how much he hates Joey in this movie.
I love it at the end when he starts laughing at him, and just like, because I don't remember what he says, but he's like, he like introduces him, or it's when she's getting ready to do the poem.
Yeah, well, he goes,
and he just starts laughing,
which everybody should have done except for Joey, who has an excuse,
and just starts laughing. Just doesn't. Yeah, it's so great.
But yeah, Joey makes some comment to Kat in his classroom at the beginning of the movie, and the teacher looks at him and goes, someday someone is going to slap you, and I'm not going to do anything about it. That's what he says. I was like,
great.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then Allison Janney as Miss Perky in this, the guidance counselor, which, by the way, I just want to state that she also started the show The West Wing the same year. So like this very prestigious thing. Yeah. And she'll be mentioned again later.
Yeah, she will.
But this is my note. I said, I don't know how to explain it, but the guidance counselor who's writing a dirty novel is such a late 90s joke. Like it just, I watched it. I was like, I don't know why. Like they just don't do jokes like this anymore. Do stuff like that
anymore. Yeah.
But like, I don't know.
I agree with you completely.
But I like Allison Janney. So
me too. Yeah, she's good.
It's just fun seeing her pop up.
Really good.
In things.
So yeah, it's like, this is crazy how many, obviously there's the big stars, but then just how many recognizable faces are in this movie.
Yeah, it really was. Like they hit a lot of people before they right before they just blew up. I mean, even adults like Allison Janney, she became a huge star right after this. Heath Ledger, obviously, like we talked about, became a big star. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, big star. And then a lot of other people had great careers. I was going to say about the Andrew Keegan actor, though, the guy who played Joey, has not gone on to a great career.
No, right?
I wonder. I mean, I don't know if he was a really good actor, but I almost wonder if it's one of those performances that you're too good at playing the dirtbag.
So then that's just what you
nobody else can literally even see you as anything.
That happens.
It's like the guy who plays the bully in Back to the Future.
Biff,
he just carries that with him forever. Yeah, and I wonder if this guy showed up in other movies and everyone's like,
I can see that.
I mean, and it doesn't help that he looks like that too.
He does.
He looks that part.
He does.
I feel bad saying that. He's probably a nice guy in real life.
Sure he is.
He's just too handsome.
Yeah.
And so you almost have to lean into I'm so handsome I have to be shallow and sleazy.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe he is just a bad actor. I don't know.
It's
hard to tell.
It's hard to tell just from this.
He's leaning into
it, but it's he is effective.
And that's the thing is you have to have a good sense of humor about yourself to make fun of yourself playing the pretty boy. I mean, when he's doing things let me show you my 2 poses. He's basically doing the Zoolander thing of the same pose.
I know, it's really funny.
Yeah, that is funny. One of my other notes about this movie is this movie has the classic unrealistic portrayal of high school, where there's very little school involved.
Yeah,
the teens do whatever they want,
whenever they want,
unsupervised, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah,
yeah.
Where I don't know, just.
These teen comedies are in a lot of ways, they're like horror movies in the sense that there's just a lot of things you just have to accept.
Yes.
It just comes with the territory. That they just kind of freely roam around the school and never really seem to have to go to class except for when the script needs them to be in class. And
they walk out of class all of the
time.
All
the time. It's a free for all.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to accept it though.
Yeah, it's all right. There's always going to be a party scene, and this one has a famous party scene.
Yeah.
Which actually got Julie Stiles, the movie Save the Last Dance. Because she dances on a table and whatever it was about her performance dancing on the table, they were like, yes, we could put her in a dancing movie.
Yeah, they did, and it made money.
Yes. But it's also it's a great scene because whereas most movies' party scenes, I don't know, there's usually not much of a point to them other than we got to have the fun party scene.
Right.
It's a great scene because it shows us a lot of character development in that scene. You see Julie Stiles, she's kind of her first kink in her armor where she can't, she actually isn't that strong, so she starts drinking.
Yep.
You get to see Heath Ledger, his sort of caretaker side, which you find out, there's all this mystery around where he disappeared for a year. Did he go to jail? Was he, whatever? He was just taking care of his grandfather who was sick and, dying. And then all the stuff with Cameron and Bianca and Joey, there's a lot that happens at the party that makes it more than just a party for party's sake.
Exactly.
To have teen partying in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we've seen that a million times where we just have the teen party. This is actually servicing the plot.
Yeah. The one part of the movie that it doesn't bother me, but it's the most kind of late 90s teen movie trope to me is the musical performance that I gotta sing a song that's the one part that I'm kind of I could do without this in the movie.
It is it's in the moment we just didn't know any better. It seems it's just this is just what we have to do. I mean, now we've got the of course 25 years and you're exactly right. You look back and okay, we didn't need this, but it doesn't feel out of place, I guess, because of it taking place when it took place, but it could easily be taken out of the movie.
Yeah. It sort of serves the plot. It's hey, you got to do something big and embarrassing to kind of apologize for her being embarrassed or redeem yourself. But it also seemed like an excuse to have a musical number in the movie.
It does.
Yeah. But speaking of music, this movie has a good soundtrack.
It does have a good soundtrack.
It opened with One Week by Bare Naked Ladies, and I was like, yep, here I am back in the 90s.
Instantly.
It just transports you. Yes.
Immediately.
There's several other great songs. I just want to shout out one other one is a song It's called FNT, but it stands for Fascinating New Thing by Semisonic. It's a song that plays while they're at the little paintball place and having their little, like, we're really bonding, connecting, and falling for each other moment.
And you got to have those scenes.
But it's just a great song with a great little guitar riff to it. So,
it really is.
Shout out to that. Good 90s soundtrack. That was one thing the 90s did do better than we do currently is just the soundtrack.
Yep.
I don't know why. It feels like movies have really moved away from the big, like, hey, let's put all the kind of contemporary hits. And maybe it's because contemporary hits are just not quite the same these days. Like,
I don't know what the reason is, because it seems like it almost always works.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah. Of course, then again, maybe they are going into teen movies and I just don't even know them. I don't even recognize that those are the hits of today.
It could very well be.
Maybe I'm just getting old. I probably just revealed myself as very old there.
I'm older than you, so.
All right. I hope you're ready for this next part because I think you're going to really enjoy it.
Okay.
So this movie, unfortunately, got zero love from the Oscars. There were 0 Oscar nominations from this. But this movie did.
Did it win some MTV Movie Awards?
It did win an MTV Movie Award for Breakthrough Female Performance for Julia Stiles.
Well deserved.
It was nominated for Best Musical Performance for Heath Ledger. Didn't win that one.
Okay.
But,
tough loss for Ledger. He got an Oscar for Dark Knight, so he's all right.
It was well represented at the Teen Choice Awards. Are you ready for this?
Okay, bring it on.
It was nominated for Choice Comedy. It didn't win. It lost to There's Something About Mary. Now, there's some weird timeline thing going on with the Teen Choice Awards because There's Something About Mary came out in 98. So there must be like an overlap.
I'm protesting.
It's a strange thing.
My opinion of the Teen Choice Awards just went down.
Yes. Julia Stiles was also nominated for Breakout Performance, which is a gender-neutral category at the Teen Choice Awards. Okay. And she lost, kind of understandably so, to James Van Der Beek for Varsity Blues. You're going to have a hard time beating the Beak. Varsity Blues.
We talked about it. Way better movie than we remembered.
Yeah.
It's great competition, though. We got Julia Stiles and the Beak going after it.
Two great breakout performances that didn't lead to what it probably should have.
No, probably not.
Yeah. This next one is awkward to even say, and I can't understand why it's a category at the Teen Choice Awards.
I can't wait.
Sexiest love scene.
Oh, okay.
Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger are nominated. I don't even know what scene it could possibly be.
Yeah,
it lost.
What did it lose to?
It lost to Rachel Lee Cook and Freddie Prinze Jr. for She's All That.
Oh, come on.
Which, again, I don't know what scene is in that movie that they're referencing.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, it's better than something from American Beauty winning.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll get to that later.
Funniest scene, it was nominated for David Krumholtz, and I love this description. A private part is drawn on Nerd Michael's face.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
It lost to Matt Dillon from There's Something About Mary. The description, Pat sedates and then resuscitates Mary's dog. Which is a funny scene from that movie, but
it is complete
it's a
crap.
98 movie.
2 different years. Come on, Teen
It was
Choice
nominated
Awards.
for Soundtrack of the Year, but it lost to City of Angels. City of Angels has Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. It's the greatest love song ever made. So
fair enough, but and our guy Nick Cage.
Yeah. I guess I'll have to understand that one because I think in large part, City of Angels had a lot of originals, and I think there was a lot of kind of already known songs for this one. And then finally, Choice Sleazebag.
Ooh.
Andrew Keegan was nominated.
Who did he lose to?
He lost to Sarah Michelle Gellar for Cruel Intentions. Kind of makes sense.
Fair enough, man. A lot of stiff competition in 1999 Teen Choice Awards.
Yeah, I'm discovering I think that's going to be a thing that I love going back to revisit. Is what was the Teen Choice Awards?
It really
showering love on.
Put you back on a time and place. Can I hit you with a take about awards?
Yes.
Would not have hurt my feelings if Julia Stiles got a Best Supporting Actress nomination.
No,
I'm not saying she got screwed over or anything. I'm just saying let me say this. If you could win an Oscar for Best 2-minute Performance of the Year, give her that Oscar for the poem reading.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really good.
That's really good. That is really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she should have been nominated for an Oscar. I'm just saying if the Academy ever did recognize movies like this, why not? I'm sure I don't know what the nominees were for Best Supporting Actress that year. I'm sure there's some awful, boring art house movie that somebody got nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
We're going to talk about some of the Oscars that year later. It was a bad year for Oscars.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the end of my notes for 10 Things I Hate About You. If there's anything that I didn't hit on that you wanted to, please let us.
I'll just quickly say, like, this is, to me, like, going back on this, it's not like, man, this is now in my top 10 of favorite movies of all time. I think my biggest takeaway from rewatching this is, this a movie like this shows, how important casting is, whether that's just good foresight on the casting director or, sometimes you got to get a little bit lucky with this stuff. You fought it off for a while. Now the cough is getting you. Because in a lot of ways, this does follow the beats that these movies, that many more forgettable teen comedies follow. There's always the misunderstanding and the convoluted, like, okay, you tell this person that I like them, but there's all that, and that's all here. But it's just elevated by how good and how likable the people are in the roles. And it just takes a little bit of effort into your writing, to write a decent screenplay where, yes, you fall into the cliches, and yes, there's this kid who's the obnoxious douchebag, and there's all these things, but it's like you also give the actors something to work with. Like, just put a little thought in, and don't lean so much on just being raunchy and gross.
Yeah.
And that's where this movie succeeds, I think. The casting, and then just a semi-intelligent screenplay. And then Julia Stiles just lighting the screen on fire when she reads that poem.
Absolutely.
Also, great piece of trivia, too, that she legitimately started crying while she was reading that, much as you are right now.
I am. And I apologize, everybody. That's taking me over. I should have had the poem ready for you to do a dramatic reading of.
And then it looks like you're crying.
Yeah.
So that's like, I think it was just like she just got so caught up in the moment of the acting that those are like supposedly like real tears that she's shedding. So,
all right.
Yeah. Really fun movie to revisit.
Absolutely.
Really, really fun. And made me honestly like Julia Stiles a lot more.
Yeah, me too.
Like, not that I didn't like her, but you watch that and it's like, man, she is just so good in this movie. And, goes without saying, Ledger's great and a lot of fun to revisit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot more fun than the movie we're going to talk about next.
Ooh.
But before we do, we're going to take a quick hiatus.
Okay.
All right, we're back. And
intermission.
Not going to seem like much of an intermission for you guys because we'll just clip that out. But, hopefully I'll be good to go here.
If not, I'll take over talking about this super normal, not weird at all movie that we're getting ready to talk about.
And you'll be prepared if I have to just get up and walk away for a bit. He can carry it because, Andy carries this podcast anyway.
Sure.
All right. Now we are talking about the uplifting tale that is
just
American Beauty.
What a feel-good movie this is.
In this movie, 87% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 93% from audiences. It had about an estimated $15 million budget. It grossed $356 million worldwide. I had no idea.
I read that like 5 times. I was like, that cannot be right.
Same thing. I kept looking at the numbers going like, am I missing something? It's like, is it 35 million?
I cannot believe that. How did that happen?
I have no idea.
I don't either. Even if I thought this was the best movie I'd ever seen, I still don't understand how it made that much money.
Right.
In 1999.
Like, I get okay, it had critical success. I was old enough and aware enough in 1999. I thought like when things were big, I knew it.
Yeah.
This one was, I had not heard of this movie. So fun story. When I watched this movie first time, I watched it with my parents.
Oh, good. That's
and the reason being is we got the classic guy who works at the video store recommendation. Like he's telling us, "Oh, have you seen this movie? Oh, you guys seen this movie? So great! It's one of the best movies of the year. You're gonna love it." And we didn't really know. We're like, "Okay, we'll give it a watch." Most awkward movie watching experience of my life.
I can't imagine it wouldn't be.
I was sitting in this little rocking, like on the floor rocker chair. My parents and I did not move. I didn't turn my face. I didn't want to see them. I didn't want eye contact. I didn't want them to make eye contact with me. We just
was it one of those things like when the movie got over, you all three just got up and walked in different directions and didn't speak for like 3 days afterwards.
Exactly. You just plow through it.
That's the way it should be. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to American Beauty. I didn't watch it again for several more years, and then I watched it in college. And I will say this: when it came out, I thought it's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a movie that has aged well in its reputation.
Right.
And
for a lot of reasons.
I don't think it is aged necessarily that well with my own opinion of it.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
So we'll go through some of this. I wrote another summary. We'll see how this one goes. All right. This is so bad, but this movie explores the angst of the late 90s middle-class family. The father, Lester Burnham, our movie's narrator, has been sleepwalking through life until he sets his eyes on his daughter's teenage friend, who he develops an alarming obsession with, but it does manage to wake him from his stupor and motivate him to embrace living again. Though he doesn't so much engage in the important things as engage in his most basic desires, buying nice cars, smoking weed, and working out to, quote, look good naked. Basically, he reverts to being a frat boy. His wife, Carolyn, desires to be successful and resents Lester for being a loser, and ultimately finds what she desires is a winner, like the best real estate agent in town, Buddy Kane. The daughter, Jane, is insecure and just wants to be loved, like her hot friend Angela, who her own dad even likes more. Jane finds the affirmation she craves in the attention of the creepy neighbor boy, Ricky, who likes to film everything for his endless tape collection paid for by selling really expensive weed to suckers like Lester. Ricky has his own problems, mainly his overly rigid father, the militant Colonel Fitz, who doesn't hate anything as much as he hates gays because he definitely isn't overcompensating for being one. That was definitely alluded to in a different version of the script. All the events of this movie lead to the day that Lester dies, finally happy because he realized what he really wanted all along was exactly what he already had. So he's really mellow about his sudden and violent murder.
That's pretty accurate description of this movie.
Does that sound melodramatic and kind of silly? Well, it was, but everyone ate it up at the time because it seemed to be insightful about the regular people angst everyone was feeling, even though the movie that actually did that much better that year was Fight Club. But despite all the Academy's sense of sophistication, they fall for the obvious social statement over the artistic one every time.
Dang, that is a mic drop right there, and you're so right. Yeah. So here's the thing. We just need to probably get this out of the way when talking about this movie. It's so weird. It's so weird. Like, so watching it again, it's not even that I'm offended. Like, I've been watching movies my whole life. You watch movies, you see a lot happens in movies. The craziest thing to me, and then what jumped out the most to me, is that you could tell this exact story without having this like 45-year-old dude, like, not even discreetly desire a teenager.
Yeah.
You can literally tell the exact same story because ultimately it's a story about like, it's like a suburban nightmare almost story. Like, you know, we look like the perfect family in the suburbs, but we're a disaster and midlife crisis and all these things you could tell without being so just in your face about all this stuff. And man, this movie wouldn't fly for 5 seconds today.
No.
Like, this movie would get shut down instantly.
Yeah.
And I know I'm stating the obvious when I say it's weird, but it's just, and again, it's not coming from a place that I'm offended. It's just like, man, what a choice. And why did we just all collectively accept this in 1999? And then of course you try and think back and they're just, I don't know, I guess maybe it felt like edgy and artsy and this movie's trying to say something. And maybe we just weren't used to that in 1999. I don't know.
I think that's exactly right. And so that's it. It's like a flat coin that I look at and go like, on the one side, I think there is some good writing in here. Like, there's some good insightfulness and like some dialogue and things. And then I flip the coin and I go, there's some really bad writing in here that's like, there's not a lot of depth to any of the characters. They're all very one-dimensional, but to sort of make a specific point, each character is just like a sort of a stereotype or a cliche.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I'm like, it could have been so much deeper, you know, and if we just like explored any one of these characters, there's a lot going on in this movie.
There's a lot.
That's another thing.
There's a ton going on. It feels like 4 different ideas kind of mashed into one movie, and it's not like you would almost think when you read your description, this was like a 3-hour movie.
Yeah,
it's not.
No.
Well, I don't remember what the exact running time was, but it's pretty basic.
Really,
yeah.
I do know that this is a movie that the writer Alan Ball, he went through a lot of iterations of it. Like, he started off with sort of one idea, and as he kept writing it,
the movie kind of
shifted
evolved
over to this one. And I think you can see when that happens, I think it's easy to sometimes have a lot of that, like too much going on and convolutedness because you've kind of got the original ideas and then the new ideas and like they just sort of build on top of each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's go through some of the other credits for this movie. So we said Alan Ball wrote it. He's mostly just written for TV.
6 Feet Under.
Yeah, 6 Feet Under and True Blood, which neither one I've seen any of.
I've seen
I know
6
that
Feet
they're
Under.
pretty successful shows. It's directed by Sam Mendes. Who,
his first movie, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's his first feature movie. I think Spielberg specifically recommended him for this project, which, you know, if you're going to get get the stamp of approval from someone, Spielberg, late 90s is about as good as it gets. He goes on to do Road to Perdition, Skyfall, and 1917, just among other things, but those are probably some of his most well-known things.
So those are all pretty high-profile movies.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of 1917. I know some people it's a little divisive. Some people don't love it, but I love it.
You know, movie. It's like some of the, like, I don't care about James Bond and Road to Perdition.
Yeah.
I'm not saying those are bad movies. Those are just not my, you know, it's not like I'm a Sam Mendes guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But 1917 is awesome.
Yeah. For the cast, Kevin Spacey plays Lester Burnham.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey was already really well known, but mostly for his turns in Usual Suspects and Seven.
He had an insane 95.
Yeah.
Yeah. He won an Oscar for Usual Suspects, right? Supporting actor.
I think that's right.
Pretty sure he did.
Yeah.
And then Seven, I mean, really high grossing movie, revered, really kind of infamous part or famous part in it.
Small part, but he really gets to shine.
So memorable. And it was such a novelty at the time that he's uncredited in that movie. And
just personally, I wanted to point out he did The Negotiator the year before this because I really like the movie
That's
The Negotiator.
Movie. Him and Sam Jackson.
And it's more of normal guy Kevin Spacey because, like we said, he's known for being the guy from Usual Suspects and Seven. Those are very eccentric villain parts.
Yep.
Spacey's good in this, but it's a weird performance.
It is. I mean, it's a weirdly written part, but it's a weird performance as well.
Like, I was sitting there going, like, it's almost like he's purposely being very wooden in his acting because between, like, when he's supposed to be kind of like, I'm out of it and sleepwalking.
Like sleepwalking.
But then even, like, his job, like, he does this very cartoonishly, like, I'm very enthusiastic in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But he carries that in other parts. It's a very strange role. And I was like, he really doesn't get very many moments to shine.
No.
I mean, one of the most remembered moments in the movie is when he throws the plate against the wall and kind of like has his like, you're gonna listen to me and we're gonna do things my way now. But I'm like, really, in hindsight, watching him, like, not that big a deal. So I'm going, it's crazy to me. We'll talk later about awards, but I was like, this is not his best performance, and it's certainly not the best performance of 1999.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I guess I don't even want to say charm but it's like, I guess maybe what's looked at is just like the effectiveness of him being just the loser. I mean, like, he does pull that stuff off, but yeah, I was thinking the same thing where it was just like, whoa, like I think I just remembered the reputation maybe of the performance more than the actual performance. But then I watched it and I was like, we've done 99 movies this year that I think there are better performances in.
Yeah.
For as far as like best actor.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think, goes back to, like I was saying, the script. There's not so much depth to this character.
No.
He doesn't get asked to do a whole lot. There's not like, man, I can't imagine other actors pulling off this scene this way because it's...
So that's one of my biggest notes. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but like, I don't think this movie's as smart as it thinks it is.
No.
It's kind of something I thought while watching this.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like this movie, like you said, like maybe it does have a lot to say, but it does it in such a one note, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're not really going very structured here, but it's almost, it all turned when people basically started realizing like what a joke the monologue about the flying plastic bag was. Like, that was such like, it became sort of a representation of this is what pretentious filmmaking is.
Yes.
And they're doing it like it's a guy talking about pretentious artsy stuff in a movie that is itself being the pretentious artsy thing. It almost lampoons itself in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes like the most famous thing from this movie is somebody talking about how beautiful a plastic bag just floating in the wind is, and everybody's like, "Get over yourself."
Yeah, like chill out, man.
Yeah,
like cool it.
Yeah. Annette Bening plays Carolyn Burnham, the wife.
Yeah,
knew her from The Great Outdoors, and she was in The American President, and The Siege. Before
Bruce
this,
Willis.
yeah, which
American President, your guy Sorkin wrote that.
Absolutely,
That's
and
a
it
good
was sort
movie.
of his precursor to The West Wing. So, she like our guy from 10 Things I Hate About You is way too good at playing the unlikable character in this. But it's also so over the top at times. I also wondered, is it good?
I didn't like it watching it this time. No,
Yeah.
I just, and again, like, okay, so she's supposed to, I guess she's part of the puzzle piece to see why this guy is the way he is. But it's just, again, it's not done with any depth or dimension or anything.
Right.
It's just not. Like,
it makes it so hard to tell, like, is it the writing? Is it the acting?
Yeah, I mean, did she deliver what they wanted her to deliver? Because she's really good in American President, I think. Like, I've seen her in stuff where she's good.
Yeah, but I think she has a certain, like, charisma about her. And
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't really know that I blame her.
Yeah, it feels like they tried to pack a lot of stuff into a little amount. Because like I said, it's not a terribly long movie. There's so much going on that each character doesn't get a lot of time spent on them, and so it was almost like they were trying to have her have a lot of depth without actually like exploring the depth.
Yeah, feels like if PTA directed this movie, it would have been the same length as Magnolia. It would have been like a 3-hour movie.
Absolutely. Thora Birch played the daughter Jane Burnham. She was from the movie Now and Then, Hocus Pocus, and Ghost World. She was sort of like a big young actress, even though I did not really know her from any of those movies.
Ghost World's really good.
That's okay.
It's a good movie. One of Scarlett Johansson's first.
I've heard good things.
It's a good movie.
I've never really actually heard it from anybody that I know.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not like an all-timer.
Wasn't a well-seen movie. I don't think it's one of the like cult hit movies.
Yeah.
And what I said is she's fine in this movie.
Yeah.
And I said I can't say it would be hard to replace her. And again, maybe that's more on the writing. Her character was kind of like, not that she was super normal, but I think she was supposed to be the most like grounded one, the one that people could say like, I can relate to her, or I feel for her because everybody else is so messed up around her. Like she's
just kind of
trying to be the most like normal.
Yeah.
But it just sort of comes across as the most bland.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yep. Wes Bentley plays Ricky Fitz.
Yeah.
Wes Bentley goes on to be mostly known in my mind for Ghost Rider and Yellowstone. The thing that I will never forget about Ghost Rider is, don't ask me why. Ghost Rider came out in the era of like when I was always watching behind the scenes things on DVD. So I was watching a behind the scenes thing of Ghost Rider, and they were talking about one of the producers, I think, was what a big get Wes Bentley was to be in the movie. And they were like, we all know Wes is like so picky about his parts and stuff. And I remember hearing that going like,
he's in Ghost Rider.
So he's in Ghost Rider. And then like you kind of look at his IMDb and you're like,
is he picky?
Like, can this guy afford to be picky? Like, really? Like, yeah. And it's all I can think now when I see Wes Bentley is, Wes Bentley, real picky about his parts.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
he's work out for him so well.
Fine. I don't have any like big Wes Bentley thoughts. Like, okay.
I don't either. I said he's good in this movie.
I was going to say he's good in this movie.
It's really, I think a lot of it almost more about his look since he's not supposed to show a lot of emotions. I mean, he's got the very distinct brow, and he does have 2 good scenes of emotional outbursts. So it's not like he doesn't act. He's got 2 big fights with his dad. That, and I'll say this: I already made fun of the floating bag monologue.
Yeah,
he delivers that well.
Like, he does.
It could have.
That's not. Yeah, that's not on him.
Very easily, like
that's not on him.
He does that with conviction, and he sells it.
I don't fault him for how that does or doesn't
work. Which is why I think it took a little time for people to like catch up to how bad it was. I think, in the moment he
makes it
so
sound
well,
like he's saying something
that everyone is like, that is like profound. And then
he's right. And then finally somebody was like, wait a second, that's just nonsense.
Yeah. So, good for him for selling a bunch of crap and getting away with it for a while.
For a while, yeah.
Mina Savari plays Angela Hayes, the object of desire for. She was in American Pie in the movie Loser. She's another one who seemed like was going to have a bigger career and it just didn't really.
I couldn't even tell you the last thing she did.
She's still acts and just doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't do as bigger parts. I think she was in the movie Reagan was the last thing I saw. She was like a small part in that one. But the older I get, the more like this is a performance that I think I feel differently about every time I see it. And I shouldn't even say performance. Maybe the character I feel different about every time I see it. Because, as a teenager, when you watch it, I think I was like, oh, like she's this. I think I know this girl. Like, there's that girl who's like so confident and like, sassy. And the older I get, the more I see it as like more of a tragic character.
Sure.
Like the older I get, I'm more like, oh, the insecurity was on the surface all along. Yeah. And so I don't know if her performance was better than I give it credit for. If it's just I get older and I'm like, it's so obvious now.
Changes, yeah.
But yeah, like I was like, she does a good job. That fake confidence is like such a real thing.
I think she's good.
And another weird thing for me for this movie personally is this movie. Again, not getting into something weird, but this movie introduced me to the idea that people lie about having sex and doing things. Like I think because again, from the culture that I come from, this conservative Christian culture in school, like people wouldn't lie about stuff because it was like taboo. So if people like were talking about it, it'd be like, well, of course they've done it. Why would they lie about it? But like seeing this movie is kind of like, oh, people would lie about it to have that reputation. Right. And like, I remember like kind of looking and reassessing like some of the like stories you hear about like people, and you're like, I bet those are lies, and like,
it's a good point.
It was a weird thing to like actually insightful to me. Now, is it like actually that insightful for anybody who's like lived enough life? Like there's just
probably
always
not,
that moment. But at the moment for me,
that's interesting.
That was like something I had not ever thought about or occurred to me that was a thing people could do or would do.
Interesting. I thought she did a good job in this movie.
Yeah, I did too. I'm going to say something that's going to sound really weird.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about American Beauty. So.
I was going to say this is somebody who I had this thought when I was 15 watching this movie. So I wasn't an old guy. I actually just never really thought she was that attractive.
Right.
And I was always like weird casting for the part that's supposed to be like the girl who the guy just can't.
Yeah. No, I get it.
And I get it. Yeah. I just always thought that was, it was a strange casting choice for that reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm not going to like be super weird. Be like, now if they had cast so-and-so.
Here's my list of people they should have cast.
Here's the people if you're an old man, you really.
Yeah. Oh, sheesh.
Chris Cooper played Colonel Fitz.
Yeah,
let's move right along. Chris Cooper is one of those guys. I'm actually surprised when I look at his IMDb because while he's been in a ton of things I've seen, he's so often just like a small part in so many things. He had a bigger part in Adaptation. I love him in that movie.
He's so good.
But like small parts in movies like A Time to Kill, The Patriot, The Town, like these movies I love.
I mean, he's one of those, to me, was always one of those guys like, this guy's always just good.
Yeah. I love when he pops up in a movie. You just know like, it's so like he's always overqualified for the role he has.
Overqualified.
And you love it for that.
Oh, yeah.
You're like,
that's how he is in Time to Kill. He's real small part, but he just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this movie, I wrote the most we get it, this guy sucks character of the movie.
It's a lot.
And I was like, he's a great actor. And so perhaps more than any other character it shows, maybe it's the lack of quality writing because I'm like, I know Chris Cooper's good. He's not just giving a bad one-note performance because he's not capable. It's just a one-note written character.
It's very heavy-handed. And like you said, it's like, okay, like I get it. Like this guy sucks.
Yeah. It also has Peter Gallagher, famous for just really, really full, thick, luscious eyebrows.
And yes, they are.
Yes. Allison Janney plays Mrs. Fitz, so Ricky's mom. And it's a weird character. They cut out a lot of her lines of dialogue because Sam Mendes says he felt like it was conveyed with just the silences. But she's just sort of like someone who's out of it. I think has like mental issues. It's kind of alluded to.
Yeah, it's weird.
But yeah, I didn't even realize when we picked these movies.
I did not connect those dots at all.
What a strange two movies to have done, and then star in The West Wing.
It's an eventful year for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Scott Bakula and Sam Robards play the neighbors, the Jims.
I love Scott Bakula. Not in this movie necessarily, but just like Scott Bakula. I grew up watching Quantum Leap.
Yeah. No, he's a likable actor. He's another one's like, I'm kind of surprised he wasn't in more.
And he's in just an 80s or maybe early 90s classic Necessary Roughness.
Yeah.
With Sinbad, your guy Sinbad.
Sinbad.
I know you're a huge Sinbad guy.
There's also a non-speaking part for a young John Cho in this movie, as he's one of the potential clients for her when she's trying to sell a house, walking through it.
Yep.
It's just kind of a fun, like, hey, John Cho.
Really loaded cast.
Yeah. Ultimately, my note for this movie was not as good as initially credited.
Oh, definitely not. But just a movie that has not aged well.
But I actually wrote not as bad as currently credited. And I think because it's pretty well like bashed now. It's viewed as like, oh my gosh, American Beauty.
We screwed up there.
Yeah. And a lot of it is, like you said, stuff that won't fly anymore. So a lot of people
Kevin Spacey had like actual allegations against him, which we don't have to get into all that.
Exactly. Like
that's a dark cloud over the movie.
Yes. There's so much controversy and dark cloud in this movie. People are like, I just won't touch it.
It's just hard for people to go around and be like, just so everyone knows, American Beauty, my favorite movie.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I watch and go like, there's some good in this movie. I think if this movie were just, this is kind of like you've talked about with Gladiator. It's like if this were just another movie, but when it gets so much attention and so many accolades,
when it's like people are like, oh, this is like people are they for a while, maybe not now, but it's like treated it like there was so much more to it than there actually was. But I will say, like, if you take away our 25 years of perspective, I do kind of understand in a way why this was a big deal in the moment.
Yeah.
Because there weren't a lot of movies like this. And this does, like, the 90s really feels like an emergence of, like, I don't know. I guess it was happening before, but, like, this emergence of, like, we're showing you something, but there's a deeper level to it and stuff. And I don't know, this just kind of tapped into that. And like, I get how people got wrapped up in it in the moment.
Yeah. And as I alluded to at the beginning, there was a lot of like everyday life angst, like something's wrong with the American dream type thing.
Stuff, yeah.
And some other movies tried to tap into it, but they would almost go too far. You got your movies like Falling Down.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like that movie.
Yeah,
but that's extreme. People aren't like, I relate to that character.
Yeah. But I'm sick of life, so I'm going to gun everyone down with an Uzi.
Yeah, but I think this one, even though it does end with a murder,
it does.
This one felt more like real people. So I think people were like, oh, this movie's tapping into something like we all feel discontent. Mm-hmm. We all kind of feel like we're stuck at our jobs, and like this guy who's breaking out of it and just sort of like, I'm going to do the opposite. Like there's something there that people really latched on to.
There is. I think in a really weird way, it kind of tapped into the same thing of Office Space to an extent of like Kevin's, like just that screw it attitude. And like, I remember it was just kind of like people love this idea of like Kevin Spacey just going to work at a fast food restaurant.
Yeah, where he says, I'm looking for the least amount of responsibility possible.
And it's like, there was something to that. I don't know if it was just the era or the time period, but there was something to that.
Yeah.
So it definitely didn't age well. Definitely did not. But I'm not surprised. I don't think that it kind of caught on like it did.
Yeah. I also wrote this note. Again, I'm skating on dangerous ground here, but as inappropriate as the Lester obsession with Angela is, if we put aside for the sake of this point, just like the age issues and all else, him being married and all that, the way that like having a crush on someone that like you see someone and you like become obsessed with, it does have that ability to like shake up your life, light a fire under you, like motivate you to like do things.
I'm gonna start working out.
Yeah. I'm like, that is very real. I remember experiencing that like in my early 30s. I had been like years without having like a real crush on someone. I was like, maybe I'm just too old now. That doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And then like
it happened.
I kind of this girl, I got a crush, and I was like, I wanted like all of a sudden I had like energy I didn't know I had.
I want everything in my life to be different.
I remember laughing, going like, I forgot this is what it's like when you have a crush. Like that you really like. I would do things I wouldn't normally do. Like I don't know. I'm just like, she could have asked me to do anything, and all these things that I would never do. I'd be like, I'd go do it.
Tell me when.
And I'm like, so there is something real to this. Like sometimes I don't think men would do hardly anything if it weren't for women.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like,
we would be so content.
We would have like the most basic.
I would just watch movies and talk to you about movies every day for the rest of my life.
We would live in houses that just basically have like a chair,
a TV,
a refrigerator,
a bed.
Like the most basic things. Women, you inspire us to do all these things. So, like, the idea that it's a female, even though it's the wrong female here, kind of snaps them out of it. Like, there's a realness to that.
That's what I mean when I say it's hard to get over just the weirdness, because you could have still told this story without it being a grown adult male and a teenage girl. Like it could have just been the new neighbor across the street.
Yeah.
And, like that's what I mean when I say it's just kind of hard to get past that.
Yeah.
Like, man, that was a decision.
But I'm with you. It was almost like they felt like there had to be an edginess to it.
Yeah.
To, we got to be pushing something.
And that worked because, I know you're going to get to it. This movie cleaned house at the Oscars and made 12 times more money than you think it should have.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So let's do it. Let's do the Oscar conversation.
I'd love to have this conversation.
I'm going to go through the Oscars that it won. And
I know it won picture, director, actor, screenplay.
Yeah. And cinematography.
Okay.
And I decided like it's too much to go like what all got ignored. So I'm just want us to look at the actual nominees and say like, how does it actually hold up against the other nominees?
Let's do that.
Which I said, not a banner year for the Oscars because
it seems like they missed a lot.
There's so many movies not represented here. And actually, like as much as like maybe Fight Club might be my favorite movie from the year, I can't believe that The Matrix got like no love from like no directing and cinematography from The Matrix because groundbreaking stuff that really impacted movies for a long time.
Still to this day, I think in a lot of ways.
So Best Picture, the nominees were American Beauty, which won, of course, The Cider House Rules, which we've lampooned enough on here, The Green Mile, The Insider, and The Sixth Sense. In hindsight,
feels so weak.
It does for the year that it was.
That feels so weak for the year. Like,
right.
Like Tom Hanks is awesome and he was on the role of a lifetime back then, but The Green Mile.
Yeah.
I can think of 5 movies that we did in this 1990 thing. I would put personally Bringing Out the Dead, Blair Witch Project, all those stuff before Green Mile, all those things before Green Mile.
But from that list, obviously I really like The Insiders, but I'm like The Sixth Sense. I think it's one of those cases where the Academy is like they
their nose is too high up in the air.
They're not well, and they occasionally will do like the sort of breakout person, but for the most part, they want you to pay your dues first. And I think they were like, we're not giving this guy on his first big hit. And it's like, that sucks because in hindsight, you look back and go, that was his best chance. Like that was
his best chance. That movie was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
That movie,
like that's the movie that I think I look back and go, if Shyamalan was going to win one, that's probably the one he should have gotten, especially considering the competition at the award show.
Yeah,
I wish they would have recognized him. For Best Actor, I think we actually talked about this one recently because Russell Crowe was nominated for The Insider. Spacey won for American Beauty. Richard Farnsworth was nominated for The Straight Story. Never heard of
that
him
movie
or the movie
in my life.
Sean Penn was nominated for Sweet and Lowdown because there was just a stretch where the Academy loved Sean Penn.
Everything Sean Penn did got a nomination.
And Denzel Washington for The Hurricane, which I understand because Denzel's awesome, but that's not one of the more memorable Denzel movies.
No.
So looking at that,
that's a bad category.
That is a bad category. Which again, we could do the thing of going through all the nominees.
Oh my gosh! Could have been right off the top of my head, like Bruce Willis, Sixth Sense.
Yeah, The Beak for Varsity Blues. Like, come on,
right?
Let's get James.
That's a really bad Best Actor category.
It is. But from that list, I'm like, man, Russell Crowe, I thought was doing so much more.
Russell Crowe was
so much more
really
nuance,
good.
So much more depth.
Yeah.
Than Spacey was doing.
I wish you could swap things, like take away his Oscar for Gladiator and give it to him for The Insider.
Right. Best Director, Sam Mendes, as we said, for American Beauty. It's another really strange list of nominees. A lot of kind of repeat movies represented here. But Spike Jonze for being John Malkovich. I don't even know how to say this name, but Lasse Hallström for The Cider House Rules. Michael Mann for The Insider, and M. Night Shyamalan for The Sixth Sense. Again, I would probably go M. Night.
Probably would.
I thought it was that's a really greatly directed movie. We talked about how well it works on the first watch and the second and the third. Yeah,
he has so much confidence in that story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best cinematography, again, Conrad L. Hall won for American Beauty. It was fine. Like,
yeah,
I mean, get the floating over the town shots, kind of famous.
Of all the things in 1999.
Yeah, it's, again, 99 was still in that era of the Oscars. They really didn't want to recognize things that had special effects. And something like The Matrix, I think, definitely should have won a category like this.
For sure.
But even in Fight Club, I think there's amazing cinematography in that. But Roger Pratt was nominated for The End of the Affair. Dante Spinotti for The Insider. I love this one just because it's so out of normal for the Academy. Emmanuel Lubezki for Sleepy Hollow. And Robert Richardson for Snow Falling on Cedars.
One of my favorites. Never heard of that movie either. Good grief, 1999.
It's a terrible laugh. That's going to sound horrible on the audio, but yeah.
Man, you're right. You read these and it's like 1999 Oscars. What were you thinking? You had so many great movies to choose from.
It's an embarrassment. It's one
really
I'm sure
bad.
they'd love to have back.
It's really bad.
I mean, I sit there and I read that list and go, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that Sleepy Hollow should have won out of those nominees.
It's very distinct and yeah.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Best screenplay written directly for the screen, or is also known Best Original Screenplay. Alan Ball won for American Beauty. Charlie Kaufman was nominated for Being John Malkovich. Paul Thomas Anderson nominated for Magnolia. M. Night for Sixth Sense. And Mike Leigh for Topsy Turvy.
Don't know Topsy Turvy, but those other three, I think, all could have won before American Beauty.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it would have been completely justified. Again, M. Night Shyamalan, he kind of got screwed in 1999.
He did. And
The Sixth Sense really got the shaft.
I think it was just a new guy on the block. We're not going to give you your flowers
I agree.
so quickly.
I agree. But, I mean, that could have easily...
Yeah.
Yeah. Sixth Sense kind of got the shaft.
It did. Especially, again, of all the movies that we've talked about this year, it's the one that actually broke through and got nominations.
Right.
That I'm like,
it's like you kind of got it right.
Yeah.
By nominating it, but then you just,
Yeah. They couldn't really.
They couldn't go for
follow through
the
all the way.
Oscars just have got to be the Oscars, and they just can't ever do the fun thing or it's always like they got to do what, I don't know. It's stupid.
Yeah. Oscars do what they do.
They do.
So it feels a little bit of a bummer to end what was such a great run of 1999 movies on a bit of a dour note, but it felt
it was
like
important to look at it. I think it was
to say that this was what was considered in the moment by the Academy the best picture of the year.
Well, I think they really missed that one. Which I bet you could say that for a lot of years, honestly.
There's so many years. I'm kind of with, I think it's Bill Simmons who's always said there should be like a 5-year waiting period before we name the awards.
It is Bill Simmons that says
some hindsight. I'm actually planning on us tapping into that in a few weeks and looking back at 2019.
Dude.
Because that's a great movie year as well, and I would love to look back at that.
Awesome. I'm all for that.
But I just I want to end on a little positive by just talking about like what was some of your favorite revisits this year to 1999.
Oh man,
so we can be positive before we go on this one.
I had a blast. So it was really fun for me to know that you were watching Bringing Out the Dead for the first time.
Yeah,
because that's just I've well documented on here. Scorsese's my favorite. I think that was. It's unfortunate we talked about it. What did it make? What was 16 million? I mean, that movie tanked.
Yeah.
And it never gets talked about. So it was fun to me to not only have a conversation, but to kind of introduce that movie to you and get to do that. I'm a horror guy, so it was really fun to watch The Blair Witch Project and The Sixth Sense.
That was, I think Blair Witch Project was one of my favorite revisits because it's been so long, and I was so glad to see it held up.
Me too. And, gosh, really, there's no negatives. Honestly, one of the most pleasant surprises to me was watching Varsity Blues.
I was about to say that.
Because I said that when we did it. I honestly thought, this will be so fun to make fun of. And I was watching it, halfway through, I was like, son of a gun, this is a pretty good movie. And we talked about it. It's almost kind of insightful in some ways about, it was kind of ahead of its time on concussion stuff and just this whole idea of how, parents and coaches will push these kids past the breaking point. And it was dang, Varsity Blues. Now, don't get me wrong. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And Scott Kahn's still driving around naked in a cop car. But that was just really fun to be you know what? I thought we were going to be able to make fun of this movie, and it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's hilarious that Varsity Blues has aged better than the Best Picture winner
Way
from
better.
that year.
Way better. So those are a few standouts to me. What about you?
I'm kind of the same ones because a lot of the ones that we revisited that I knew I loved were kind of it's always fun to go back and revisit The Matrix because it's been a while.
But
it's
my
fun to watch
opinion didn't change a whole lot.
Yeah. I think Magnolia was an interesting rewatch because it was sort of in my mind as the one PTA movie that I really connected with. And as I rewatched it, I was like, I don't actually like it that much, but I think Tom Cruise is so electric in it.
Tom Cruise is so good. It was fun for me. I hadn't watched Go in forever. You know, like I had not seen Go in a really long time, so that was fun to watch. That's a fun movie. Like it was just fun, and it was really just the whole exercise was fun because it's like I just kind of assembled this giant list of 1999 movies. So it was fun every couple of weeks to kind of comb through it and be like, oh, I could do this. You know, kind of that thought exercise was just a ton of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to throw out a couple of movies that we didn't watch.
Mm-hmm.
No, I say a couple. I mean, decent list. So Boondock Saints was kind of a big movie at the time, and it crossed my mind several times to watch. The South Park movie.
That one did not cross my mind. I was never a South Park guy.
I'm really curious how I'll feel about it now because I don't think I've watched this as a teenager.
Yeah,
and I remember thinking
I bet
it was really
would be super annoying now.
Notting Hill, which is
honestly crossed my mind, especially after we watched Heretic.
Yeah. I did think about The Hurricane because I wanted to see, like, I know Denzel's really good, and, like, I don't remember much about this movie. Just should we go back and
my memory of that movie was it just being really dull.
Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson's Payback, which is a movie that I've always thought I liked more than I actually think it's good.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of curious. Maybe we should go back and watch that. Mystery Men, a movie that I don't think is great, but I'm more curious to see now because we're on the other side of a big superhero boom and to see, like, what is this superhero comedy that happened before superhero.
It would have been fun to see, like, was this movie just ahead of its time, or are we not ready for it yet? Yeah.
Three Kings was another one that I
had Three Kings like 4 different times.
Yeah. And then there was a couple of movies that I actually never saw in 1999 that I thought about choosing just to make myself go see, which is Analyze This. Never watched. The Iron Giant, which gets a lot of critical praise.
It gets a lot of critical acclaim,
Girl Interrupted is a movie that I never watched. And then Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which I hear is very similar to Snatch, and I love Snatch. So I'm kind of like, I kind of want to watch it. I kind of watch it because I haven't seen it and I hear it's good, but also at the same time, I'm like, if I already have Snatch and they're, you know, like, is it going to be like
repetitive?
Yeah,
almost.
I don't know.
But at least we got in Deep Blue Sea.
We did.
That was really important.
That's right. And we were able to, I think, learn a lot of things during 1999 rewatch. And one of them was that LL Cool J should have been a much bigger actor.
Yeah. LL Cool J, what was he? He was too
Any Given Sunday.
Any Given Sunday, yeah. It's like LL Cool J gave 2 good performances in 1999.
Yeah, he did.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. So, yeah, 1999 was a blast.
I think in 1999, it was so fun. And I mean, just what a year. I know it's stating the obvious because we did devote so much time to it. It's really unbelievable.
It is.
That list of movies is just insane. And it's like anything, you don't really appreciate it in the moment. You know, it's just kind of like, yeah, cool, another good movie coming out. And you look back, you're like, good grief.
Yeah.
Especially maybe now that, like, we're kind of on a little bit of a cold streak of, like, new movies that we've really enjoyed lately. So it's like you look back at this and it's like, it has to average out where every week some kind of impactful movie was coming out.
Yeah. That, like you're saying, what it really comes down to is just the depth.
So much depth. And so many, just, it's so fun to look back at all these emerging stars.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Absolutely. Well, I think the next episode that we're going to be doing, if I remember my calendar correctly, is a review of Nosferatu.
Yeah.
So
I'm really excited about that.
We're actually getting pretty close to that release.
That's crazy. It comes out a week from today.
Yeah.
Christmas Day.
Yeah. Well, from when we're recording. People won't hear this until a little later.
Yeah.
Because we're having to schedule ahead for
it's busy time of year.
Yeah, busy time of year.
A movie that I am really, it's so funny. I'm really excited for Nosferatu, and we've talked about it coming from a director whose movies I don't really like.
Yeah,
but really excited about it.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic. I think is the tone for that one.
Yeah.
Well, so next time we talk, we will have already experienced Christmas. So we want to wish everybody,
absolutely,
a very Merry Christmas. And
I'm getting really excited that it's almost time for our year-end episode.
Yeah, I've already been jotting down some notes.
Me too.
But until next time, we'll see you all after Christmas.
Yes.